Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. Interesting episode today. This is Buzz Osborne from the Melvins, among many other things, including Phantomas. Now, if you don't know who Buzz is, why don't I read you his bio right now? Originally from Morton, Washington, musician Buzz Osborne founded the rock band the Melvins in the early 80s, and in 1986, CZ Records released their first EP, 6 songs. Since then, they've released over 40 more albums, EPs, and compilations on record labels like Alternative Tentacles, Sub Pop, and Ipecac Recordings. And while never achieving mainstream success, if that's even something they sought, the band is both sustainable and hugely influential, influencing everyone from Nirvana and Soundgarden to Helmet, Tool, Mastodon, and many others. Their latest album, Five-Legged Dog, a 36-song acoustic reimagining of their discography, is out now, as in today, if you are downloading this the day it comes out. And actually any other time after that. I suppose that's how time works. I will be honest, I came into this expecting Buzz to be gruff, based on his music, based on pictures I have seen of him online, where he is, say, not smiling. I've been a fan of Melvins since high school, since I discovered them. Do you remember when Nirvana broke and literally everyone in Nirvana's orbit was scooped up by a major label? And that's how I found bands like Melvins and Mudhoney and a lot of great music in that time. But all the context clues would have led me to believe that Buzz was a gruff customer. That's not the case at all. Very friendly, giggly even, one might say. That one being me. It's also interesting, politically, if you've never heard the show before, I'm pretty far left, I would say, socialist, if not something further along that line. Anarchist? I'm not sure exactly. But Buzz, very classically, I would say libertarian. And, the goal of this show is to figure out the, let's say, fertile ground that the art I like springs out of. So this is not one of those shows where, I guess I would say this as a parenthetical. If someone said something hateful, I would challenge them on the show. But if someone just happens to have a different political opinion than I do, I don't tend to challenge it. I don't tend to challenge my guests who happen to be more liberal or centrist. I'm not going to challenge someone just because they seem to fall more on the libertarian side of things. But I think Buzz did expect me to push back on certain stuff. I did cut out a little bit where we go on a digression, I think, about taxes. And I did not think it was conducive to, letting me know where Houdini or Ozma came from. But yeah, interesting dude. I hope you like this one. And if you do and you want to check out some other episodes, what I like to do here in the beginning is a little recommended if you like this episode. Maybe you like similar guests. Ian MacKay, Colin Newman from Wire, Thurston Moore, Weasel Walter, Ardo Lindsay. So check out those episodes. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. Got some great episodes coming up. I just talked to Ram V, the wonderful comics writer, and that was super interesting. So stay tuned for that. But for now, let's talk to Buzz. But I'm kind of curious. Like, I don't think I've talked to a lot of people that grew up in Washington.
Yeah.
And you lived in Morton for like the first 12 years of your life.
Yes, very good.
And I don't know much about that town, and I'm kind of curious about, like, what was your experience of Morton?
It's a very small town, about 900 people. That's where I was born. I was born in a tiny little hospital there in 1964 called by a doctor named whose last name was Hogberg.
Hogberg?
Hogberg. Hog.
Mm-hmm.
Hogberg. That was his name. My family had very little. We grew up with nothing, really, hardly. I mean, very little. My dad worked in lumber mills and things like that. And at the time, when I was maybe 5 or 6, my mom worked at the post office, which at the time was not an amazingly good job. That was a job that you did. You didn't get paid much, but you probably were assured of having your job. So we didn't have shit. But when you're going through that, you don't really think about those kinds of things. I didn't know anything any different. It was we lived on the edge of the tiny town there's about 900 people there. It's up near Mount Rainier. Bad weather, mostly. And in the summers, my brother and I, who's a year and a half younger than me, we would sleep outside in the yard for the whole summer.
Mm-hmm.
I remember sleeping during my summer vacation, sleeping almost the whole summer outside. We didn't have too much. I mean, we had fishing poles and stuff like that, little ones. We'd go fish in the river. And then a buddy of mine that I met when I was young, his dad was a pharmacist in the small town, and they had a little bit more money than we did. I would go and play at his house. That was fun. They had a cool mid-century house that was much nicer than ours. Ours was drafty and horrible, really scary, kind of. My parents bought it. I think I would have been 7, and they bought it for $6,000. Yeah. So
yeah,
I was maybe 5. $6,000, and made payments on it. So, and we lived there until I moved to Grace Harbor when I was 12, and Aberdeen first, and then Montesano after that.
Okay. I'm kind of curious. Were you class conscious at the time? Like, were you aware that you were working class and there was like a difference in terms of money between you and, like, say your friend whose father was a pharmacist?
Yeah, I knew they had more money, but it wasn't a lot more.
Uh-huh.
As far as class went, that wasn't anything I thought about. Most of my family, my relatives were, hillbilly rednecks who viewed us as having money.
Uh-huh.
And not. So, mostly because my dad actually had a job, regardless of whether it was a lot of money or not. But my parents didn't have a lot of money then. They still don't have a lot of money. They don't have any money. They never have. They own a house, but that's about it, really. I mean, they were always in debt the whole time I was young. Not ever remember a time when they weren't paying something.
Yeah. I asked that because, like, I always had this kind of, like, I was never conscious about it, but when I was a kid, I always knew there was something different between me and, like, rich kids. Like, when I was around people who had money, we were pretty middle class, but there was still, like, I still felt like for me, it always manifested in me feeling like I was being judged when I was around people who had money. I don't know. I mean, it probably wasn't true at all. Probably no one gave a shit, but like that, that's where I don't know how I had that feeling or why I had that feeling when I was a kid. I just had it.
I don't think I concerned myself with that sort of thing before I was, in high school. And by the time I was in high school, I really didn't give a shit what anybody thought about me. I was done with all those kinds of things long before that. But when I was in grade school, the idea that I would spend most of my time outside and doing outdoor activities like, fishing and hunting to some degree, a little bit, and wild, crazy shit outside was all I cared about. And playing sports.
Yeah. Was there something that like
sports. Loved it? I still love playing sports. Yeah. And by the time I was about 13 or 14, I didn't like the people that played sports, and so I moved on. I didn't really play anymore, but not because I didn't love sports. I love to play sport. Not necessarily like watching sports, but I love to play sports. Love it. I always have. I love physical activity. I love exercising. I love all those kinds of things. Still do. And now it manifests itself in a lot of other ways to exercise and golfing. It's one of my main outdoor activities, which is perfect for musicians because musicians essentially are people of the great indoors. And it's something that gets me outside walking, approximately 4 to 6 miles. And you're playing a game the whole time. And, a lot of people have an idea about, your country clubs and stuff like that. I don't go to country clubs, I don't mix with those kinds of people. They don't like me. I don't like them. But there's plenty of muni courses and public courses out there that you can play. And I need a challenge like that. I need it. And I'm pretty good at it. So I love to do it. Self-taught. Just figured it out. I was determined. Same with guitar. I was determined to play guitar. No lessons,
What made you determined to play it? Like, what was it about the guitar specifically, like when you were younger?
I didn't start playing guitar till I was, nearly out of high school, 11th grade, maybe. I don't know. It just seemed like a good thing to do. I got into music when I was about 12 or 13, solely because of the way the people looked in these magazines. I didn't have any record stores where I lived. I lived in Montesano. After we moved there, my dad moved there for work. He worked in the timber industry until he retired. And that didn't amount to a whole lot. But where I lived there, I moved from a very small town to a little bit bigger town, Montesano, but I still lived out of town. There was nothing around where I lived. I mean, you could shoot guns right out the back door where we lived, no problem. And everybody had guns. Right? I grew up around guns. I've never been afraid of guns.
Yeah.
Ever. I mean, that kind of thing never concerned me. Still doesn't. I don't have the same kind of prejudice against that kind of stuff that a lot of people in my world do. I think it's a good thing, that we're allowed to do that if we want to. I think it's great. You don't have to have them, but don't tell me I can't have them.
I'm from Pennsylvania, so there, where people would take off for the first day of hunting.
That's right next to Transylvania.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Pennsylvania's that's all rural too.
Yeah,
all of it. That's a lot bigger state than people think. You drive across it all day long and still not be out of it.
Yeah. I was just talking to David Thomas from Pure Ubu this morning, and he's from Ohio. And I mean, he did an entire album about Pennsylvania, but like, there's this, people don't think of, there's a giant expanse between Pittsburgh and Philly that is mostly rural.
All rural. There's nothing in between there.
Yeah.
It's very woodsy, and that's a Night of the Living Dead territory.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly what it looks like. Still does. Or Deer Hunter.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Or the first Rambo.
Yeah. But Deer Hunter especially. I can't drive around anywhere outside of the Pittsburgh area without thinking of Deer Hunter. Any of those towns all look like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But Pennsylvania's a huge state. It's very rural. I'm sure you got lots of people with guns. Mostly no trouble.
Does it remind you at all of Washington?
Yeah, probably. We might get a little more rain where I lived in Washington. We lived right below the rainforest, so it was constant rain on a biblical level. More like 110, 120 days of rain in a row, where it would just rain every single day. I describe it as living inside of a shellfish, is what it was like. Everything's wet. Houses just melt down. The porch will just rot off of your house. Nothing lasts there. It was a horrible place to live in hindsight. I don't recommend it. I mean, right now, if you went there, it's beautiful. It's really nice. But if you're thinking of moving there, go there in January. Take it in January.
Did that affect you as a child growing up? Like, did that like get in your bones?
I think in a negative way. It certainly did. It drove me to things like drugs and alcohol pretty early, which is fairly common there. Not that it's not uncommon everywhere, but there's always been a massive amount of drug and alcohol addiction in the Northwest. Almost everybody I knew very few people who didn't at least drink. Very few. And I always think it's funny too when people talk about like, oh, I don't want my kids growing up in a big city, because of the drugs and blah, 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 going to school. I'm like, are you kidding me? There's any drug you wanted at the tiny school I went to. You're not going to hide from this stuff. You can't hide hide your kids from any of that kind of stuff, no matter where you go. If there is a liquor store or there is a hospital or pharmacy, there are people there abusing drugs. That is it. No way around it. So you can hide from it. You can pretend like you're going to hide from it, but you're just not going to be able to do it, no matter where you go. So yeah, if you don't want your children to do that, you have to approach it from a different perspective than that. I'm going to hide them from the realities of the world. Seems like a bad idea. To me anyway.
I mean, how did your parents regard drugs and alcohol? Did they try to hide that from you? Were they like, this is what this is and this is what the world is?
No, they didn't talk to me about it at all. They weren't drinkers, which is surprising considering how much alcoholism there is in my family, but my parents weren't drinkers. My mother's mother, my grandmother, she drank herself to death in her early 60s, and her father, which would have been my grandfather, died drunk driving when my mother was 5 years old.
Huh.
So there's a lot of that kind of thing. But every single family has its own Tennessee Williams stories. They do. Somewhere in the family, some Tennessee Williams nightmare. He didn't just dream that shit up, It's all around us all the time. So I've seen a lot of that kind of thing. They didn't know anything about drugs. They knew a little about alcohol. My mother certainly knew about it growing up in that household. But it wasn't pretty, but we didn't really discuss it. I'm still waiting for my parents to give me my sex talk. So
I got one in 5th grade. They answered all my questions, and that was the last time we ever talked about it to this day.
Yeah, nothing. And nothing. That subject never came out.
I mean, were you kind of aware of this tragic history of your parents, or at least of your mom, when you were a kid?
My dad's side's just as crazy, if not more so. But it's more prison style stuff. My dad was considered the upper crust asshole, and he didn't have shit. But compared to them, he did, and that's how he was viewed by most of his relatives. Too good for the rest of us. And it's just like, so we were never around him. They were scary, dangerous people involved in who knows what. I would say a good example of that, of what my father's side of the family was like, was there's a book by Larry Clark called Tulsa. If you just look through that book, it reminds me a lot of the way a lot of his relatives looked. If you look at that, that's pictures that Larry Clark took in the 60s of his friends doing drugs, doing crazy shit, and it's chronological. Really good book. I would highly recommend it. And when it came out in the early 70s, it was very controversial. It shows these people shooting up and pregnant women shooting up. And it's a really good book. I mean, the book is amazing. I would say arguably it's one of the best American photography books ever, I would say, as far as the starkness of the reality of what it really is. I love that book. I think it's really fucking amazing. And I love photography as well. So, I'm a street photographer as far as that's concerned, and always have been for a long time. I just never showed anybody the pictures until a couple of years ago when I started an Instagram account. I think people are surprised at the quality of the pictures. They never would have thought that about me. But I always loved photography, always have. But just until digital photography, I never could afford massive amounts of, getting them developed, and I was going to own a dark room. I didn't have any of that kind of thing happening. So, or expensive cameras, but digital cameras now, and digital has opened up a whole world that I can immerse myself in, which I love. Hopefully I have a photography book ready to go to come out. It's all mostly street photography or stuff of the band and, or of my wife and dogs. But it's all in a way that, I can sit for hours and just dick around with the pictures and, looking at them and putting them in orders. And I love all that kind of stuff. Love it. I'm a list maker. It's part of the way I make music. I love it. It's just one of my favorite things. I love to look at the lists. I love to look at all those kinds of things, go through them all. Lyrics, album titles. I have thousands and thousands. Yes.
Yep.
Thousands of those.
For the listener, I just held up one of my many notepads sitting around the computer here full of lists of things to do. Yeah.
I love that. And photography is just one of those things where to me, it's like, I wouldn't be a good in like a studio environment. I'm a street photographer. That's what I'm looking for. I could take a good picture of you out and around in your area. But I just walk around and find something that looks interesting and then take a picture of doing that. I mean, I did it with Revolver. I shot the cover with Mike Patton that came out good. And I think that kind of proved that I can do that sort of thing for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't need a big bunch of fancy gear or any of that kind of stuff or assistance. You need imagination. You in any artistic thing that you're going to do, if you don't have the imagination or the eye for it, it's not going to work. You can't throw technology at it and make it work. It does. This doesn't make any difference. It won't have thousands of dollars worth of equipment if you have no eye for it. It just won't matter.
Well, two questions. Let me start with this. Did you always have an eye for aesthetics, for even when you were a kid, if you walked around and you noticed something was like an interesting shape, or is that something that's just developed as you have developed as an artist?
I always loved looking at people's faces. I always loved looking at architecture. I loved the scary aspect of Mother Nature. And I've always had a huge amount of respect for it. As far as that's what I think, like a movie like Deliverance. That's what it is. It's about. Don't be arrogant and put yourself in that position with thinking that you're going to be able to outsmart Mother Nature. It's difficult to do. Mother Nature is a big and scary thing. And that's what civilization has taken us away from. And I love that. I have, like I said, I have the utmost respect for the ability of Mother Nature to fuck you right up very quickly. I don't want to go near the bears. I don't want to go rock climbing. I don't want to go swim with the sharks. I don't have any interest in any of those things. I love to look at that kind of thing, but at a distance. I don't want to be involved in it. I don't. And I grew up out in the woods. And the woods are scary. It's a scary thing. Lots of civilizations think the jungles and the woods are filled with ghosts. I believe that too, but I don't believe in ghosts. But I believe if there were ghosts, that's where they're going to be. It will kill you very quickly if you don't know what you're doing. And you don't have, and you're arrogant. Arrogance and traveling around out in Mother Nature is a really bad combo.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I want to get back to some of the Washington stuff, but like, I'm kind of curious about, you have said you are both a, let's say, fan of nature and also wary of it in the sense of like, I really think of this term, Kant had this term about the sublime, and it's like seeing the like whole of nature. Like if you were confronted with like the whole of the ocean or something, like you're in the middle of a rowboat somewhere, and just like being confronted with that, the fear, and the beauty of that is mixed together in your brain.
Yes.
Because you can't even comprehend this giant thing. And that, to me, that's the beauty of nature, right? It's this thing, it's so immense and it can destroy you like that.
Yes. Respect it.
And also, you growing up in this kind of small town, it's raining all the time. It's raining, whatever, like a third of the year, more, half of the year.
More than that, yeah.
Right. You have this... You have these large forests around you. You're sleeping outside all summer. I'm curious about how that kind of formed you as a person. Like, to me, it seems like you would be someone who does not enjoy having someone arbitrarily put authority on them or arbitrarily tell them what to do. Right?
No, I don't like that. In a lot of those cases, I didn't even know I didn't want to do that until you told me I had to. I'm not into that sort of thing at all. I'm not a good at taking orders as far as that's concerned. I'll follow the rules, but a lot of times I'll just try to keep myself out of a situation where I have to, deal with that kind of thing. That's why I like doing what I'm doing and making music for a living. And I will do that as long as I can because I like being my own boss. I like making the rules and dealing with it on a level that I can understand. I'm much better at that. But having said that, I always worked. From the time I was 12, I've always had some kind of job. My parents, if I wanted any kind of money at all, I was not going to get it from my parents. And I think that's, granted, I don't know totally, but it doesn't seem like kids work that much anymore. Weirdly. It's odd. Teenagers should be working. Children should be working. 12-year-old kids should be working. It's not a bad idea. I mean, I liked working. I liked having money. I didn't always like my bosses, but I think I learned a lot by working. How to show up on time, how to deal with cranky customers and asshole bosses, and I learned how to do all those kinds of things, people skills. Whereas my brother never worked. He stayed at home the whole time and then went to college and then worked at a prison until he's about to retire. I just, I've had conversations with him where I said, you understand that I've been paying Social Security since I was 15 or 16 years old, and you didn't start till you got out of college. How is that fair? It's just like, because I never went to college, I never wanted to. So I always never had a problem working. I always wanted to work. Not that it instilled in me some working class hero type stuff, because mostly didn't like the people I was around, but I liked the money. That was for sure. So I don't know. I don't know where I was headed with all that, but.
Well, just authority. Like because I'm kind of curious about this. Yeah. Like, if you don't come from a wealthy background, I think trying to make art, whatever you're talking about, music or writing or whatever, right, is a risky kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, you could do it on the side, right? That's not the thing. But if your aim is to like, hey, I'd like to try to support myself doing this, it can be risky, right?
Well, I always figured that, if it doesn't work, I can just get another crappy job. That's not hard. Eventually someone will figure out that I'm smarter than the average bear, and I'll have a better job. But I wasn't concerned about whether I was going to make it or not, as far as that's concerned. When we got to the point where we could finally make a living, meaning we could pay bills for a little while, wasn't until about 1988. So we started the band in 83. So it was a good solid 5 years of just working crap jobs and playing music until we got a royalty check somewhere in 88. And it was enough so me and Dale could say, we're going to try to do this without having regular jobs. And so it didn't mean we had a lot. It just mean we had just barely enough to survive for a little while. And so we said, well, let's jump off into the deep end and just see how long we can make this work. And so far, I haven't had a job since. Not a regular job, just this kind of work. But, it takes 70% of my waking hours, I would say, of me figuring out what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it. We don't have a manager. We don't have anything like that. We don't have anybody underwriting what we're doing. Never have, as far as that's concerned. We're on Atlantic Records for 3 albums, but that gave us a little bit of money, but we didn't make, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We got very little. I probably got enough to last me about 8 months. Just a decent amount of money at once, but that money's long gone. That was a long time ago. That was over 25 years ago, about 28 years ago. So we didn't get millions.
Yeah. No, I asked that because, when I moved to New York and then when I moved to Los Angeles, I'm suddenly around like very wealthy people. And I realized that for them, if they wanted to go like make a movie, not only did their wealth afford them the ability to have connections that I didn't have, but it also gave them, it wasn't a risk in the same way that if I failed, that was it for me. I would have to do something that I didn't maybe want to do. And I mean, it seems like you were just like, well, if I have to get a crappy job, I don't care. They'll figure out that I'm better than whatever, I'm
maybe
doing.
Maybe they will, maybe not.
Maybe, but like, it didn't seem to bother you. You're like, yeah, if music doesn't work out, it doesn't matter in a certain sense. I don't know if it was like, I can always just make music on the side, or it just doesn't matter.
I didn't think about it like that. I just thought I can always get a crowd. I never understand people who are broke. Go get a fucking job. Any job. Didn't matter to me. I'd work anywhere. But the thing with rich people, though, you have to understand, there are very, very few people in the world who just happen to have money. There's not that many. And if they do, that money won't last that long. If you have a rich father, by the time he's done with the money and you're done with the money, your son's not going to have any money, or your kids aren't going to have any money. That money's gone. You don't have to do anything. They'll ruin it themselves. So I never knew that many people who I can't think of anybody really who had so much money nothing mattered to them. I've never hung around. I know a few millionaire business owners or millionaire rock stars, but they're one divorce away from being nearly broke. Their kids will have some money, but by the time their kids are done with their father's money, it's gone. They take risks as well. People lose massive amounts of money doing things that are stupid all the time. It can be gone in an instant. A 1929 stock market crash killed how many people's fortunes? Gone in an instant. So if you can add up how many people can just walk through life, que sera attitude, don't matter to me because I've got so much money, I never have to worry about it. I don't know. I know very few of those people, if any of those people, that money is just no object whatsoever. That's never been my reality.
Maybe not no object, but I do think there is a difference, especially if you want to make music or write or whatever, art in general, right? That there is a certain whimsy you can have if you are wealthy, right? There's a certain, even if you're not, yes, maybe you are a stock market crash away from ruin, but at the moment, you can't blow like $100,000 or $1 million, but you do have a cushion that gives you some space that.
Yeah, some. I don't know how much difference that makes, though. I mean, it's some difference. I don't know anybody. The only person I've ever met who told me straight up, my dad was rich. I never had a job in my life. And he was hugely successful as a musician, was Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. Other than that, I don't know anybody else. It was just like, I never had to worry about shit. I just played guitar. My dad was going to support me no matter what. Or my family money was always going to be there. I don't know those people. He's the only one that I can think of off the top of my head that just openly said, my dad was rich. I never had a job in my life. All I did is play guitar. That's it. It worked out. But other than that, I don't know that. I don't know that story. I'm not sure of it. I know there's people who have lived their life, and then maybe at the end of their parents' life, they got some little windfall of money, but no, very few that were millions of dollars. And I know more of those stories where they got, a couple of $1 million and that money was gone inside of 6 years. Gone. They just wasted it. That's more common.
Interesting.
Than just like, you have nothing to worry about. Don't worry about it. No big deal. Because it's like, like let's say let's say your parents give you $1 million. So a lot of people, it sounds like a ton of money. A ton of money. And it is a lot of money. But if you go, I'm going to buy a house with it. Well, medium-sized house. Let's just say you spend $300,000. First off, you pay tax on that money. So you pay a death tax on it, a massive amount. But let's say that after taxes, you got $1 million left, which means it gave you close to $1.5 million by the time you end up with some of it. Okay, and if you want to buy a house with it, well, there's a house is like, let's say 350,000, depending on where you live. Now, if you want to live out in the sticks, in the middle of nowhere with nothing around, maybe you could buy a house for $200,000, But if you want to live somewhere where you actually want to be, like LA or something like, you're going to spend the vast majority of that just on the house. So, and maybe you have $300,000 left, which will last you a few years before it's gone. It's like there's not that much screwing around you can do, I mean, a little bit. Might be able to go on a couple of wing-ding vacations, but beyond that, it's not that much money,
I do think it's interesting though that like you have this like very practical attitude towards this stuff, not just like money, but making art in a certain sense.
Yes.
And you started, both you saw your parents, your mom. You said your mom worked at the post office. Your dad worked in.
She worked in the post office for a little while.
In lumber. I think sawmills. You said at the beginning, but like. You start working and you start working at the age of 12. So you have a very deep connection to hard work.
Yes. I understand the difference between doing nothing and doing something, and that you actually get something on the other end of it. Working hard has always made sense to me. Always. I never felt jealous of someone who didn't have to work. I always felt, well, get off your ass and go do it yourself.
Well, that's interesting because I always did feel jealous of people who, and it's not like I grew up middle class. Like I said, we had food on the table. Like it wasn't, extravagant, but we had food on the table and we had clothes. Right.
Yeah. But they have their own problems. I mean, I knew rich kids, quote unquote, rich kids whose parents were brutal alcoholics and it was nightmarish. Didn't matter how much money they had. No one suffers, like Bukowski said, no one suffers more than the poor. That's true, but in actuality, when I think about what makes me happy right now in my life, if I'm laying on my bed with my 2 dogs and my wife, and I don't owe anybody any money, that's enough for me. I'm not going to get any happier than that right there. So, and I know plenty of people who have tons of money that are not as happy as I am, not even close. Money doesn't make you happy. It can make certain things better, but by and large, you have to be happy. If you're not happy, you can't buy it. You cannot do it. Does not work. I've watched too many people, rich people's lives collapse around them, whether it's drug and alcohol or divorce or infidelity or whatever, a nightmare. It's a gigantic cornucopia of misery. You have to weather that no matter what section of life you're in. It doesn't matter. What do you want? What do you get? Not everyone in the ghetto is unhappy and a gun-toting maniac. That's just crazy to think that. And it's not true. Most people there are decent people, the vast majority of them. And, when you get rid of the horrible criminal element, that place turns around in a heartbeat, whether it's through the church or whether it's through community organization, as far as they'll do it. But you have to get rid of the criminal element first. Rid of.
Well, how did you, this is a very healthy attitude, right?
Yes.
And, how did you gain this? How did you get this perspective?
I think it's just common sense, personally. I've never felt anybody owed me anything. Ever. I never thought that you owe me this because you have more than me. You should give me this. I never felt that way. I've heard it explained a long time ago. If you work all year all day to make one ping pong ball or two ping pong balls, is it okay for me to steal one from you? No. If you work all day and you make 1 million ping pong balls, is it okay for me to steal half of it from you? No. The answer is no. Just because you made more doesn't mean stealing is more right. That doesn't make sense. If it's wrong, it's wrong. That's it. So be as jealous as you want. That's just something that you're going to drag around and make your own self miserable because it's never going to be enough. No, that is your fucking problem, not their problem.
100%. But I want to know, how did you, you were right, but how did you come to that, right? Was that something you've always that? Because there's both this morality that's in there, right? Where you're just there is a moral truth. You don't steal, yes. Right?
You don't do it. If it's wrong, it's wrong.
Yeah.
You don't do it.
I do believe there are moral truths, and you can make your justifications for why you've done something, and your justification might be okay. But I do think there are moral truths.
I could justify murder.
Yeah.
He was fucking with me. I thought he was going to kill me. So I shot him in the head. It's I'm sure Ted Bundy had all kinds of reasons why he thought it was okay to murder women. To him, it was fine. No problem at all. Went to bed every single night after doing it. But I never felt that way, ever. Even when I had nothing, I never felt that way. It just seems like a horrible state of mind to be in, because even if you achieve whatever it is you think you want, it's not going to be enough. There's always going to be some bigger badass than you. It's like if I sat there and went, yes, I make a living playing music, but I haven't sold as many records as them. I'm not as rich as he is. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that. I'd be just another miserable fuckhead. That's not me. I'm not going to ever feel that way. I don't feel that way. There's lots of people I don't like, but it's not because they have quote unquote more than I do. It's because they're fucking assholes. It doesn't matter if they're rich or poor.
But where does this come from? Was this instilled with you through religion, through your parents, just the way that they saw the world?
My parents, no, I never had discussions of that nature with my parents, ever. My parents never went to church. I never set foot in a church with my parents, ever. I had no religion at all as a child. My dad was a Baptist while he was a kid, so he never went to church. And my mom was a Catholic, and so she never went to church. So they never shit-talked the church, but they also didn't talk about how great it was or anything. They just didn't say anything about it at all. They didn't have disrespect for it. They just didn't go. Didn't care. They didn't go, those goddamn church people. No, I never heard those things in my growing up, ever. Never talked about it. I never went to church. I don't know anything about that stuff. I know very little about it. So it wasn't from that. It certainly wasn't from growing up in the environment I was in. I think it's just something I fell upon myself pretty early on. I always thought I was smarter than my bosses, and that it would work out for me somehow, someday. I wasn't wrong about that. You have to be pretty solid in your convictions to sit there and steadfastly look down the into the abyss without worrying about it. And I worry a lot about it, but I also kind of figure out ways around it. And so, like with our music, I don't know what people want. I've never known what people want. I have no idea what the public wants. I have no clue. All I know is what I like. And I figure, since I have good taste, if I make music that I will like, then there'll be other people out there that will like it too. I don't know how many. I have no target audience, but it's not going to be millions, but it will be enough. And that's kind of just how I view the whole thing. It's like, I'm solid in my relationships. I've been married for 28 years to the same woman. It's the only time I've ever been married, the only time she's ever been married. We have a very solid relationship as far as that's concerned. I feel like I have built a world around me that is of my own making, and I do what I want when I want, and I don't really need more than that. That's fine with me. I'm good with that. I like my life. I like doing what I'm doing. I like the music I'm making. I like the woman that I'm with. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, sticking to those convictions and not having that kind of petty jealousies of people has made it to where I've been able to stand on my own 2 feet for a lot longer. It hasn't put the rot into me. Mm-hmm. I don't feel that way. I feel grateful, not jealous. As weird as that sounds,
No, but I guess it's the thing that I'm trying to figure out, because okay, I see where the self-sufficiency comes in, right? I see that from where you grew up, and again, being a hard worker, working from a young age, I can understand that. It's the kind of you didn't say it exactly like this, but I think anyone who makes art has some kind of void inside of them in some way.
Oh yeah.
And at some point, you either recognize, you could go your entire life not recognizing that the void will never be filled, but, I think the void is always there. And if you're lucky, you realize, hey, this is never going to be filled, so I should find happiness in other parts of my life, right? Through relationships, through friendships, through just the act of making art, right? Through the act of writing a song.
Yes.
I love, regardless of what happens with the business parts of it, I still love writing. I still love writing a script, even if it doesn't sell for whatever reason. There's still something meaningful in the act of, and so I get the idea of again, from your youth, about the idea of finding meaning in work, right? That seems pretty obvious to me.
Yep.
But were you just always resilient about these other things, or always self-aware that hey, this is the outcomes are never, I'm going to be optimistic, but the outcomes are never going to make me happy. So I shouldn't put all my emotional eggs in one basket. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. I remember in high school watching kids getting ready to go to college, and me just thinking, good luck with that. This sounds like a waste of time to me. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to go. So first off, I don't want to go to a place where you're going to be. I don't like you. And this is just going to be high school times 10. And I didn't want to be in high school. And if I had to do over again, I would quit high school as soon as I was able to. It was a waste of time. I don't see the point in most cases of people even going to college. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. It's and I've heard this thing, you're going to go there and learn how to think. No, unless you're going into something like medical science, or, you want to be a doctor or a dentist or an engineer, you're going to go and learn about life from people who don't even have a fucking job. Fuck you. You're going to tell me about business when you don't even run a business? A 15-year-old crack dealer understands economics more than you do, buddy. He's got a business to run. You don't. You're going to tell me how businesses should work? That's insane.
It's like that Rodney Dangerfield movie, Back to School.
I didn't see it.
He's a businessman, and he goes back to school for, I forget why, but he goes to college. I guess he never went to college and he wants to have the experience, and he's in a business class and the guy's telling theory and he's like, I run a successful business. And then he explains to everyone how to run a successful business.
That's it. So you're going to teach me, I'm going to go in and sit with, if I want to take music, I'm going to sit with someone who doesn't make their living playing music, who's going to tell me about how to play in a band or how to make music or what's right or wrong. That just sounds nuts. Or get taught something by someone who doesn't make their living doing it. All right. Good luck with that. I mean, if you look at somebody like Jimi Hendrix, right? Jimi Hendrix and lots of to lots of people, he's the greatest guitar player ever. But if you look at his technique and the way he plays and what he does, there's not a single guitar teacher out there that would ever teach that. Yet he's the best. That makes no sense. No sense at all. I've never understood that. Shouldn't he be the way that you're teaching people how to play guitar? If he is in fact the best? No, not at all. Well, that goes into every area. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to go here and I'm going to go and teach. I don't know. It just seemed like a waste of time. I think I would get a lot more out of college now than I would have ever gotten when I was younger, because it just seemed like you don't know what you're talking about. I had that figured out pretty quickly, especially with high school teachers. It's like this. I remember telling teachers, this isn't even really a job. You're just here because you wanted to escape the draft. It's like, you don't want to be here. And the teachers would just stare at me, especially then in the 70s. It's like, you figured me out. It's like, right. You're not a fucking teacher. You're nothing. You're nothing at all. I don't have any respect for you. It doesn't make any sense to me. What are you teaching me other than babysitting? What am I here for? Nothing. It makes no sense. You are just a failure. I'm learning nothing from you about anything.
Well, who were the people then that you did look up to when you were younger? Like, who were the people where no one?
Not many.
Not many.
No, not many. I had no real role models as far as that was concerned. When I moved to Montesano, I basically was moving into a situation where I was going to school with kids whose parents had went to school together and who had married each other. And I may as well have been beamed down there from fucking Mars. It was like, I was not going to get in there. I certainly was not going to get some kind of local job with any help along those lines. I was not going to get any help from any of these people. And I knew it. And so for years, like from 6th grade through probably 10th grade, I didn't have any friends. None at all. I just did my own shit on my own, pretty much on my own time, whatever it would be. And then 10th grade, roughly, is when I met Dillard, who was the original drummer in the Melvins, and then Lucan. But Dillard was the one I really was attracted to. And he was but he'd always been there, and he fit into there a lot better than I did. And I had teachers at the high school that told me, you just have to get out of here. You're not going to make it here at all. You're just not. This is long before I played music. Your brain thinks differently. You don't belong here at all. It's not you that's the problem. It's this place is the problem for you. So you have to get out. I remember I said something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I said something to a teacher about the stock market, and he had stopped, and he was like, I've never thought of it that way. It's like, I can't remember what it was. It was like, well, I can't remember exactly. It was something about it being gambling or something, right. Or something like, are you telling me that the stock market average is 7% that you're going to make? And so if I want to make in order to make $70,000, I have to have $1 million tied up in the stock market? Why would I do it? That doesn't make sense to me. And I remember him just sitting there, like, it was something like that. And he was just like, that, I've never had it really looked at that way. I never thought of it that way. I'm like, right. It doesn't make any fucking sense. None. Why would you do it? Why wouldn't you just buy an apartment building or a duplex? You'd be a lot more better off. Plus, you'd have the equity in something that comes out of the ground as opposed to a fucking theory. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Did you want to be an individual? Like when you were younger, did you say to yourself, I want to be an iconoclast. I want to be myself, capital M.
But I'm not perverse. I'm not doing it just to be different. I'm doing it because I want to do it. It makes me happy. That's fine. But I'm not perversely going, I'm going to make this music that millions of people aren't going to like. No, I'm making this music and I think millions of people should buy it. They just don't.
Right. Well, I think that's what connects, right? It's authentic. It authentically comes from you. And I think that's what makes it connect.
I don't mind looking like a weirdo. It's fine with me. It doesn't bother me. I don't really particularly want to be in that situation that most people are in. And I don't think most people have to do it. Dress up like it's Halloween every day. You don't have to look like some dude that just walked out of church. You don't have to. Why do you? Well, that's your own problem.
Yeah.
It's like there's a thing that is in Easy Rider, the movie Easy Rider. And they go, if you tell people that they're going to be, if you tell people they're not free, they're going to start killing and maiming to prove that they are. But if you show someone that's free, it's going to scare them. That's it. That's been my experience my entire life. And I don't care. It's a war of attrition. I will outlast you. I always have. I'm here. I'm much more dedicated, and I have thought this out a lot more than people give me credit for. I've really spent a great deal of time thinking about what I'm doing. Great deal. It's not an accident. There's very little that I have not angled on any of this that I haven't thought of already. And it's like, right, I thought of that about 30 years ago. Oh, that. Oh, yeah, I thought about that about 30 years ago. Just on and on. I'm not miserable. And I change things up. And I take chances all the time. It's fine with me. Let's do a record with this person. Let's do a record with that person. Have different bass players. Let's do acoustic record. We got a 4-album acoustic record coming out. 36 songs, 2.5 hours. Who does that?
Yeah, it's great.
Let's do an album with the original drummer and have Dale play bass. I'm not afraid of any of that stuff. I'm not afraid to do it. There is no band that's doing anything like what we're doing. Ever. No band. Who? That has as much fascination with the Rolling Stones as they do Throbbing Gristle. You tell me who it would be. That's us. And that's the way my brain thinks. I want to run a radio station where I play whatever I want to. That'd be great. Somebody give me the chance.
Okay, this is the real final question then. Because it's you might be one of the most resilient kind of people that I've talked to who just who just doesn't let other people affect them or who is not scared. And I'm curious, again, last question. Have you always been this way, or was this something that happened to you, like you changed?
Well, I remember when I thought we kind of started out as a hardcore band, sort of. And then I thought, that's not really going to work for me. And I want to make music that there's a missing hole here. And I'm going to do this in a way that I don't think has been done before. And I think it will work. I think it's something that's missing in music in general. And those ideas, especially on our first album, when you listen to it, it's very alien album compared to what was happening at the time. And it was not well received. But I was like, I don't care. Live or die. This is where I'm planting my flag. That's it. And so years later, few years later, we put out a record called Ozma. The tide starts turning a little bit, and we start making enough off of that record that we can finally stop working. Okay. Then after that is when the grunge explosion all happened. We were already stopped working, and Soundgarden, Nirvana, and all that stuff started getting bigger. And those guys were massively influenced by what we had done, because their taste in music is far more advanced than their fans have any idea about. So they can like an eccentric, weird band like us, whereas their fans, who are in the millions, would have no concept of even anything that was remotely that strange. So what I always looked at that as, and they had no problems talking about how much of an influence we were on them. So what I always took away from that was I was right. That my ideas about music changed music on a global level simply because I didn't stop what I knew to be correct. Music was, from that tiny seed, went into every corner of the entire globe. So I'm fine with that. Good. I wasn't wrong. I'm not wrong. And I have all of that to look back on and go, just keep doing what you're doing. You're fine. You're not wrong. You're right. Don't listen to this bullshit. You're going to win. All you have to do is be sure and work very diligently and hard towards this end, and let them catch up with you. Don't circle around their flag. But if it's not good, it doesn't really matter. You can plant your flag and it can be shitty, and it doesn't make any difference. You still have to have that artistic spark somehow. But for me, it hasn't been something that was easy. I've worked very, very very, very hard at, and I kind of put it down as like it's panning for gold. I move a mountain of crap to find a few little nuggets of gold.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to do that. I have probably in my phone the makings of 300 songs just in my phone, most of which won't ever see the light of day. But I have to do that. Who is going to do that? Who's going to have 10,000 pictures and 300 songs in their phone? Me. But I just figured, like I said, it's a war of attrition. That's what it is. I can outlast you. I can do that. No problem at all. And I feel like the luckiest person in the world, as far as like the guys I play with, Steve and Dale right now. They're the best to me, the best rhythm section in the entire world. Why they're not playing in some huge band? It's just this bands are stupid. They're dumb. They should be. But I get to do that, and I feel massively lucky that that's happening to me. Take it from there. That's it. So all those kinds of things have happened, and it made me think that I'm not worried about what the results are. And if there's assholes in my way, all I have to do is wait. Eventually they're gone. I don't have to do a goddamn thing. They will do it. They will hang themselves, give them enough rope, whatever it is. They will do it. And I will move on. And I will continue doing what I'm doing. I've never stopped. Since it would work, I have never stopped. And that's not going to happen until I'm either not physically able to do it or no one cares.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That seems like a really good place to end.
Yeah.
Buzz, thank you so much. This was
thank you.
A real delight.
Right.
It was great.
Good.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye. Bye.